Picture this moment. You're standing across from her, and suddenly you feel it, that invisible drain. Something precious flowing out of you, but you can't name what. Your confidence? Your center? Your very essence? She hasn't touched your wallet or stolen your time. Yet somehow, in the space between her knowing glance and your eager explanations, you've been quietly dismantled. And here's the brutal truth most men never realize. The more you tried to impress her, the less impressive you became. The harder you worked to win her approval, the further you drifted from your own power. This isn't about manipulation tactics or dating games. This is about an ancient wisdom that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche understood better than most, the devastating truth that words are often the weapons we use against ourselves. And silence? Silence is where your real strength lives. We've been fed a lie so complete, so pervasive, that most men swallow it whole. The lie that masculinity is performance, that real men speak louder, dress sharper, earn more, say the perfect things at the perfect moments. Society has turned masculinity into a constant audition, where every interaction becomes a desperate attempt to prove worthiness. But what if I told you that the most magnetic force a man can possess is his refusal to audition at all? What if the secret isn't in what you say, but in what you choose not to say? Nietzsche saw this clearly. He understood that true power doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. Think about the mountain. Does it shout about its height? Does it explain its strength? Or does it simply stand, unmoved by storms, unchanged by seasons? The mountain's power lies in its stillness, its refusal to be anything other than what it is. This is the masculine energy that the modern world has forgotten. Here's what most men fail to grasp about the feminine mind. Women are not impressed by your words. They're studying your presence. They're not listening to your explanations. They're feeling your energy. And they can sense desperation from miles away. Every time you rush to fill the silence, you reveal your fear of it. Every time you explain yourself, you apologize for existing. Every time you chase her validation, you hand her your power on a silver platter. But the man who can sit in uncomfortable silence, the man who doesn't flinch when she tests his boundaries, the man who refuses to dance to the rhythm of her moods, he becomes a puzzle she cannot solve. And women are drawn to mysteries they cannot decode, not because they're manipulative, but because it's their nature to explore depth. When you stop explaining yourself, something profound happens. You stop apologizing for who you are. When you stop chasing her attention, you reclaim your own. When you stop trying to win her approval, you remember your inherent worth. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. This is about recognizing that your peace is not negotiable. Your dignity is not for sale. Your center cannot be shaken by external storms. The man who masters this becomes untouchable. Not because he doesn't care, but because he cares about the right things. He cares more about his integrity than her opinion. He values his authentic self more than her temporary approval. And paradoxically, this detachment becomes magnetic. Because in a world full of men desperately seeking validation, the man who doesn't need it stands out like a lighthouse in fog. Silence does something powerful. It forces people to confront themselves. When you stop filling every gap with words, she's left alone with her thoughts. When you stop reacting to her provocations, she's forced to examine her own behavior. When you stop explaining your worth, she has to discover it herself. You become a mirror that reflects her true nature back to her. And most people aren't comfortable with what they see. This is why silence unsettles. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of truth. Your silence becomes the space where her insecurities echo, where her games lose their power, where her masks begin to slip. And in that space, real connection becomes possible. Not the connection built on performance and validation, but the connection rooted in authentic presence. Nietzsche didn't write for the weak. He wrote for those willing to shed their comfortable illusions. The comfortable illusion that others' opinions define your worth. The comfortable illusion that love means losing yourself. The comfortable illusion that peace comes from avoiding conflict. The Nietzschean man understands that real strength is often quiet. That true confidence needs no announcement. That authentic power requires no audience. He doesn't argue to prove his point. He doesn't chase to show his interest. He doesn't explain to gain understanding. He simply lives according to his values, regardless of external pressure. This doesn't make him arrogant. It makes him free. Free from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval. Free from the desperate need to be understood. Free from the prison of others' expectations. So how do you cultivate this silence? How do you develop this unshakable presence? It starts with a simple recognition. Your worth doesn't fluctuate based on her response. Your value isn't determined by her validation. Your identity exists independent of her approval. When she tests you, breathe. When she provokes you, pause. When she tries to pull you into drama, step back. Not as a tactic to manipulate her response, but as a practice in self-mastery. Because the goal isn't to control her. The goal is to master yourself. And mastery, real mastery, is evident in what you don't do as much as what you do. The conversations you don't have, the arguments you don't engage, the explanations you don't give. This is where your power lives. When you embody this principle, everything changes. Not because you're playing games, but because you're playing a different game entirely. You're no longer competing for her attention. You're cultivating your own presence. You're no longer seeking her approval. You're honoring your own standards. You're no longer afraid of losing her. You're committed to not losing yourself. And this shift, this fundamental reorientation, creates a different kind of attraction. Not the desperate pull of neediness, but the gravitational force of genuine confidence. Women sense this immediately. They feel the difference between a man who needs their validation and a man who chooses their company. Between a man who fears their absence and a man who embraces his solitude. Between a man who argues for his worth and a man who embodies it. This isn't about becoming emotionless. This is about becoming emotionally sovereign. This isn't about shutting down. This is about opening up to your authentic self. This isn't about rejecting connection. This is about creating space for real intimacy. Because when you no longer need her to complete you, you can choose to complement each other. When you no longer fear her leaving, you can appreciate her staying. When you no longer require her understanding, you can offer genuine acceptance. This is the liberation Nietzsche pointed toward. The freedom that comes from self-mastery. The peace that emerges from inner authority. The strength that grows from philosophical understanding. Most men will never reach this level because they're addicted to the drama, addicted to the chase, addicted to the validation. But for those willing to break free, a different kind of life awaits. A life where your silence speaks volumes, where your presence commands respect, where your choices reflect your values, not your fears. The path forward is clear, though not easy. Begin today. The next time she tests your boundaries, hold your ground silently. The next time she tries to pull you into unnecessary drama, step away gracefully. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause and ask why. This is not about punishment or manipulation. This is about self-respect and authentic living. Remember, the strongest men in history were often the quietest. They let their actions speak. They let their presence communicate. They let their character do the talking. You have that same potential within you. The question is whether you're willing to access it, whether you're ready to trade the addiction to validation for the freedom of self-mastery, whether you're prepared to become the kind of man who doesn't need to prove his worth because he embodies it. Nietzsche called this the path to becoming superhuman. Not superhuman in power over others, but superhuman in power over yourself. And that power, that unshakable inner authority, is what true attraction looks like. Not the desperate performance of insecurity, but the quiet confidence of a man who knows exactly who he is and refuses to apologize for it. The choice is yours. The silence is waiting. The power is there for those bold enough to claim it. Welcome to your transformation.